Hello, I hope I find you today doing well and your life blessed and full of the grace of Jesus Christ in many, many ways. I want to share this morning a passage of scripture from Luke chapter 10, verses 40 through 41. It says there, "But Martha was distracted with much serving." Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things." I want to come to Martha's defense today. Any of us who would desire to have guests in our homes want to put our best foot forward, and we want to present the best image that we possibly can. We want our guests to come into a clean home. We want food, we want water or drinks available to them when they come to their home. So as guests arrive, we are doing everything we possibly can to see to their comfort and to their needs. One thing about this particular text is it's very clear that the house that Jesus and the disciples have come to, and there probably were more than just simply the 12 plus Jesus or 13 guests. There were probably some of the disciples' wives. We are told that from Paul in the letter to the Corinthians, that Peter's wife at least traveled with him, and so the assumption would be that others did as well. So there would have been a good number of people that would have shown up that day to Martha's home, and she owned the house. And so the greater responsibility is on Martha to provide a good experience for those guests as they arrive into her home. She wants to be a good hostess. So Martha is doing what any of us would want to do at the moment. We want to serve our guest, and that's exactly what she is doing. She's serving her guest. Now Martha's sister, Mary, and her brother Lazarus both live in the house, and so they are there as well. Luke sets, however, a contrast very quickly between the two sisters. He shows us there is something very, very different about the two sisters at the very beginning of this account. There was so much to do to take care of the guests as they arrived, and again, including at least the 12 plus Jesus showing up at this particular moment. But Mary is described by Luke in Luke chapter 10, verse 39, by the words, she sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. There are two things about Mary that are described here in Luke's account. She sat and listened. So right at the time that her sister needed her the most, she is sitting and listening and not helping in the service that Martha is engaged in to the guests that have arrived in her home. Martha is described in verse 40, Luke chapter 10, verse 40. And the words that are used to describe Martha are the words distracted with much serving. Distracted with much serving. So the two things about Martha are that she is distracted and serving. She's distracted and serving. But Luke continues in his description of Martha in the fact that she is very irritated with her sister. And frankly, she is kind of miffed at Jesus as well as the story continues to unfold here. Listen very carefully to the words of Martha as she comes and approaches Jesus about her frustration and about her anger at this moment, especially at her sister. But listen to the words. She comes in verse 40, Luke chapter 10, verse 40, and says, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone?" The word care means concern with anxiety. Lord, are you simply unmoved by my situation and by my circumstances? Do you not feel what I feel? And Martha feels that Jesus has simply no concern for her needs at this particular moment. She is feeling that he has totally ignored her in what she's doing and simply catering to those that are sitting at the feet of Jesus listening to the teaching. She feels abandoned by her sister and to some degree by Jesus. I'm sure there have been many times that a lot of us have felt that very same thing. We have felt abandoned by those around us. Feel like we've been left alone. And I'm sure there's even times when we feel abandoned by Jesus. Where are you, Lord, at a time when I so desperately need you? The word distracted, that is also used of Martha in verse 40, means to be overburdened by the needs of the moment. To be overburdened by the needs of the moment. So she is really feeling an intense inward pressure about what is happening at this moment, as all these guests have arrived at her home and she is required now to serve them. And she feels like she's being left alone. In fact, she just feels completely overwhelmed at this moment by the experience that she is in. Probably so much so that she really doesn't know what to do next. It's kind of just one of those times when you feel like you're just chasing yourself all around, but really accomplishing so little. And I'm certain that's probably a lot of the ways that Martha feels at this particular moment. In truth, I think you can hear Martha's self-talk at this moment, and I'm certain it goes along this line. Nobody cares but me. Nobody cares but me. Have you ever said that about any particular circumstance in your life? Nobody cares about this but me. In truth, I think we would all feel the same way. We would feel the same way. And maybe you're actually feeling that emotion right now. Maybe there's something going on in your life or some circumstance that you are facing, and you feel that very thing right now, that nobody cares about this but you. You feel alone. You feel abandoned by people around you, and you may even feel abandoned by the Lord himself. You just feel like nobody cares about this particular situation but you. No one around you cares, not even Jesus seems to care. But Jesus responds to Martha and to her words that she has just shared with him in verse 41. And again, I'm coming to Martha's defense because I think that her feelings are very understandable right now. I think she's feeling things that any one of us would feel at this moment as we would experience a similar thing. But in verse 41, Jesus responds to Martha and to what's happening in her life. And I want you to listen to these words. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. You are anxious and troubled about many things. I want you to first notice the tenderness that Jesus speaks to Martha with. And this double pronunciation of her name, Martha, Martha, is a very important thing because he's looking straight into her eye at this moment and saying to her, Martha, Martha, settle down. Calm down just a moment and listen to what I have to say. And I think there's tremendous tenderness in the voice of Jesus as he begins to speak to Martha. And he's really letting her know that he does care about what she's feeling and about where she is at this particular moment. But he uses two words in verse 41 to describe Martha and her current state of mind. He says, first of all, of Martha that she is anxious, which means literally concern over the possibilities of what will happen. If nobody cares about the service that needs to be done right now, if nobody's helping me in the preparation, then all of these guests are not going to be cared for. They're going to walk out of our home and they're not going to have this feeling that this home was a home that treated its guests well. And in the ancient Near East, including this time here in Palestine as Jesus walks the earth, it was a time when your guests came into your home and you were very concerned about the guests as long as they were in your home. Now, I jokingly say this, but it really was not an unusual feeling that while that guest was in your home, you had to care for them. The moment they stepped outside your door, you could stab them in the back. But as long as they were with you, you had a responsibility. And Martha feels that tremendously, So she is concerned over the possibilities of what's going to happen if no one joins her in the service that she is trying to provide all of these guests that have arrived there. Now, we're never told exactly what it is, but Jesus sees into her heart, and he sees more than her anxiety over this moment. He sees more than the anxiety over this moment. And you get that feeling here. But again, the Greek word implies a concern over the possibilities of things. There must have been more going on in Martha's heart than just right now. This is sort of the cap on the whole feeling that she's having, because there must have been many things that she is anxious over. And again, we're never told exactly what those things are. But Jesus seems to understand, and he begins to peel back the emotional heart of Martha and look deep into her and begins to understand there's some real issues here in Martha's heart. But he also says that she is troubled. She is troubled, which implies an emotional anxiety. Since the time that her guests have arrived, she is growing more angry. And there may have been even other things in her life that have created this feeling of anger because of circumstances that have gone on around her, and her feeling that no one cares about the circumstances of the situation. And so she has grown angry. She feels being like she's been left alone. And I have a feeling that it's more than just this time of service. I think there must have been more things that she has had this feeling about. Well, Jesus, again, is peeling back some emotion and beginning to get into the spirit, into the heart of Martha, and letting her know that he does care. He does see exactly what's going on in her life. I think we need to be very careful here at this point in time of over-spiritualizing Martha's state of mind. Jesus clearly sees the pressures in her life. A lot of times we see people and we see the anxiety in their face or their expressions of anger over at any moment, over any particular situation. And it would be easy to, well, you're just not a spiritual person. You're not mature. You're not where you need to be. And it would be easy to make those evaluations. But we don't know what's really going on in the heart. Jesus is cutting to the chase. He's getting down into the heart of Martha, and he's beginning to express to her that he does see, and he sees deep within her, and he sees exactly what's happening in her life. That word that is translated things in that particular text, you are anxious and troubled about many things. The word things actually does not occur in the Greek text. The New Testament was originally written in Greek. And the word things does not actually occur. What does occur is the Greek word poulos, which means a multitude of things. There are many, many, many events, many things that are piled up in Martha's heart. And Jesus is saying, Martha, you've allowed a lot of life stuff to pile up in your heart and create a moment that you are about to blow because of the feelings that you're having over this particular situation. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is a moment that has brought all of this emotion and all these feelings to the forefront. And it's kind of like in Martha's heart, this is the last straw. It's like if somebody doesn't get up and help me right now, I'm walking out the door, I'm leaving, I'm done, I'm finished, and I am complete. You ever felt that way? I'm sure many of you have at some point in time. You just feel exasperated by the fact that you can't get help or you can't get someone to join you in what you're feeling or the need of the moment. Well, this is exactly where Martha is. And the truth of the matter is, and this is what Jesus is really beginning to express to Martha, if anybody needs to sit and listen, it's Martha. Martha is the one who needs to sit and listen. Maybe Mary is the one that needs to get up and serve, but Martha needs to sit and at the feet of Jesus and listen. So Jesus tells Martha one thing is needed. Out of all of these things that have pressured you, out of all these things that you have allowed to build up in your heart and just grow and grow to a point that many things, many multitudes of things are pressing in on your spirit and on your heart. Jesus said in verse 42, one thing is needed. One thing is needed. And then he expresses to Martha that Mary has recognized that. Mary seems to understand that one needed thing. And he says it in verse 42, chapter 10, verse 42. Mary has chosen the good portion. Out of all the options that are before her, all the things that life is presenting at this moment, Mary has chosen right now, at this moment, to shut all those things out and to sit at the feet of Jesus and listen to his voice and listen to what he's saying to her. That word portion literally means a part of the whole. There's a lot of things you could choose at any moment. There's a lot of things that could press in on you at any time. But that's where we have to make the choice. What's the best thing? What's the needed thing? It's not the service right now. It's not all the guests that have walked into the home. It's not the thing that we have placed so much importance on. But it's the one thing. And that one thing right now that is so needed and so important is for Martha to be able to separate herself from the pressures of all of these things that have built up in her heart, and especially the pressure right now of serving. Right now, she needs to come and sit and listen to Jesus. She needs to come and sit and listen to Jesus. Can you separate yourself from all those pressures, all those things that are going on around you and in your heart and in your life, and all the things that you're feeling right now, and sit and listen? I find sometimes the time that I try to quiet myself and sit and just listen to the voice of the Lord and hear what he wants to say and what he's trying to say to me, what he wants me to speak to my congregation at any moment. And sometimes at those moments, all kinds of stuff come flooding in. Like all of a sudden I remember this, that thing, or the other thing. And all of a sudden I find myself feeling anxious and needing to get up and go take care of what it is that I'm feeling the pressure over at that particular moment. But Jesus says, one thing is needed. And that one thing that is so desperately needed in your life is to sit at his feet and listen. The greatest need for every single one of us is to sit at the feet of Jesus and listen. This is especially true at a time when life pressure begins to push in on us and we begin to feel greatly like Martha does. Man, I'm going to blow at any moment. That's exactly the moment when you need to separate yourself from all those pressures and sit at the feet of Jesus and listen. Life, like for Martha and Mary at this moment, is presenting many choices. Many things are being offered to us. Many things are being laid before us. And we've got to decide which will be our portion. What's going to be our part? What are we going to do at this moment? Are we going to sit and listen? Are we going to bow to the pressure that we feel so intensely at this time? And just sit and listen to what the Lord would speak to us at this time. Because a lot of times, it's in those times of quiet reflection with him, when we're listening to his voice and we're quietly sitting before him, that he begins to speak words into our hearts that will calm us and comfort us. You know, you cannot crave the bread of life if, like Martha, you are distracted with much serving. If much serving is the issue that's pushing in on you right now, then the bread of life is going to take a secondary role, and you're not going to sit and listen to his voice and receive. You cannot crave the bread of life if, like Martha, you are distracted with much serving or anxious and troubled about many things. Sometimes we just need to separate ourselves out and say to the Lord, right now, what's important to me is for me to hear your voice. Jesus is telling us what the most important thing is. And again in verse 42, he says, Mary has chosen, verse 42, Luke 10:42, Mary has chosen the good portion, and that will not be taken from her. That is extremely comforting to me. You know, out of all the things that I've got to do, out of all the pressures on my life and choices that I have to make on a daily basis, when I choose to sit at the feet of Jesus and listen, he's not going to send me away. He's not going to say to me, you know, you got to get up and take care of this thing. You got to get up and take care of that thing. The greatest delight in his heart is when we sit and we listen to him and we let him speak to us and calm us and comfort us. Mary has chosen out of all the possibilities that lie before her, she has chosen to sit and listen. I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, will I get consumed with what everybody else is consumed with? Will I be drawn into the fracas of life and all the things that are happening and in the age in which we live? And every one of us know this, that we are living literally on information overload. And sometimes all this information does terrible things in our spirits and our hearts. It causes us great anxiety. And sometimes we just need to turn it off and say, you know what, I'm not even listening to that. I'm going to sit at the feet of the Lord and listen to Him. I want to hear what the Lord has to say today, not what the latest gossip or the latest thing that's happening around the world. Those things are always going to be there. But sitting at the feet of the Lord becomes such an important, precious time for you, as He can speak into your life and speak peace and comfort to you. Will you sit at the feet of Jesus and listen? Will you take time? I have found that the most important time for me is early in the morning. I get up rather early, sometimes 4:30, even earlier at times. And I find that to be the most precious time when I can really hear what God is speaking through His Word. When I can really receive what God really wants me to receive. Maybe the early morning is not your time. Maybe there's another time for you. But find a time during the day when you can sit at the feet of Jesus and listen. Help us, Lord. Help us, Father, to make the choice of the good portion, to sit at your feet and to hear what you will say to us today as you speak peace into our souls and spirits. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. Have a great day in the Lord today. May His grace and His peace be yours as you walk with Him in the quietness and the reflection, as you sit at His feet and listen to